Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Komet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Jason, are you keeping cool this week?
Yeah, it's been really, really hot here, and fortunately, we do have AC, so it's helped out a lot, and it's been nice to have. And I'm actually currently recording it in the pod cave here in the basement, and it's really cool here. I could almost put a pair of socks on. So sorry, I hope that doesn't make you jealous.
Just a little bit. We don't have AC. We have a portable unit that we keep to our son's nursery, so he gets to enjoy a nice breezy 22 or 21 degrees every night while we suffer through with an open window and a fan on. But hopefully, we're through the hottest part of this heat wave, and cooler days are coming soon.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I'd rather take this in -40. So, but then again, easy for me to say. I've got the air conditioning, right?
Well, I always say I think when it's -40, I wish it was +30, and then when it's +30, I say, you know what, -40 is not as bad as I remember it. But
Yeah,
6 months from now, I'll be whistling a different tune.
exactly. So, if you are a new listener to our podcast, Scott, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
So we don't cover weather trends in Calgary, but we do talk about soccer here. So we focus on soccer in Calgary. We discuss the amateur, collegiate, and professional teams and players. We talk about grassroots initiatives, the amateur leagues and teams, all the way up to the university squads and the professional teams in Calgary, including Cavalry and Calgary Wild.
And this week, we're going to review Cavalry FC's match last weekend against Valour. We're going to also preview their upcoming match against York United, which will be on Saturday afternoon at Spruce Meadows. Foothills WFC completed their UWS season last week. We're going to go over the League One Alberta standings and look at some possible playoff scenarios. And as we usually do, we have an interview this week. Who's our interview with this week, Scott?
So our interview this week was with Karim Bachir Bey. He is from Calgary, but he spent a lot of his career away from the city since kind of becoming an adult. He plays his university soccer for the University of Lethbridge Pronghorns, and he's currently playing in USL 2 with the Thunder Bay Chill. So we talked to him about what it's like to play for the Chill, which, Jason, you and I have talked about off air. You seem to know quite a bit about that program.
Oh yeah, I've been fascinated by that program for years because Thunder Bay is not a big place and they've had this really, really successful program. Like they've won the national championship. Every year that team is really, really successful. And almost none of the players are from Thunder Bay. They basically bring in all their talent from all over North America. And like I said, it's always sort of fascinating me that this team has existed for like 25 years, really complete under the radar, even of the hardcore Canadian soccer fan. They win all the time. And yeah, nobody seems to know anything about them. And they're playing in a small place.
Thunder Bay people seem to know about them because Kareem was talking about some of the fans that they get. The attendances are really impressive. I imagine most of our listeners would be at least somewhat familiar with USL2. It seems a lot less followed here now that Foothills doesn't play in that league anymore, but it was the division of the United Soccer League that was previously known as the PDL. So used to be a lot more, I guess, relevant in Calgary when Calgary had a PDL team that was also quite successful for a couple of years. But no, it was a really fascinating chat with Kareem. I'm excited to hear that interview this week.
Well, we'll get to it in a little bit, but let's transition over and talk about Cavalry FC.
Hello, Fraser Aird here, guys, and you are listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So last Sunday afternoon, Cavalry went to Winnipeg and they played Valour, and Cavalry was finally able to break their series of ties. Well, I guess the last match was a loss, but they finally got into the win column. They had a 1-0 victory.
Yeah, it feels like it had been a while since Cavalry won a league game, but this one, I don't want to say it never seemed in doubt, but it seemed like a win that could have been by more than one goal. But yeah, Fraser Aird scored. I think it was around the 34th minute. as usual, he was out on the right wing, and the ball came out to him. He was in the box, kind of toward the edge of the box, and I think everybody in the stadium and watching on One Soccer probably thought he was going to cross it because that's what he's been doing so well this year. But he roofed it into the net, past Valour's goalkeeper, and in the end, it was the only goal of the game.
Cavalry actually had less of the sort of really good scoring opportunities that they've had in previous games. They didn't have as many of those, but the one difference is they were able to score when they had the one really good opportunity presented to them here with aired shot.
Yeah, you referenced Valour having some really good chances in this game, and you have to credit Marco Carducci for coming up with some big saves, especially one in the second half on a Valour breakaway that he got a stiff palm to.
Yeah, those saves were huge and made the difference in the game. That there were a couple of situations where it could have very easily been goals. In the post-game press conference, Tommy Wilden Jr. basically said that they got the result and that's what matters, and they're going to move on from there. So I think that was true, and kind of go their way even a little bit at the end. That Winnipeg, they had that really stupid red card at the end of the game. Like that was kind of silly on their part. I don't know. I wasn't very impressed with sort of some of the attitude of Valour. Like I put a little mention in the notes here. Do you know the whole water bottle story? I'm really curious to know how this actually really played out. But you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I saw a clip shared. I can't remember which player it was, but after he was subbed off, didn't he throw away the water bottles that were by Cavalry's goalpost so that like the players couldn't grab a drink or something when there was a break in play?
Yeah, I'm not even sure there was several, but I think it was Carducci's water bottle, and he just picked it up and walked away with it. And then once he got close to the corner flag, he threw it up against, far off to the side there. So I was like, really, it's 30 some degrees outside. I thought, I don't know. I just, it's funny how sometimes something really rubs you the wrong way. I just thought like that was the epitome of no class.
Yeah, and we're, we started this episode by talking about how hot it is here. And I mean, a lot of the Western Canada and the prairies are going through a heat wave right now. And yeah, it was hot that day in Valour. And I think, you're playing on turf. It always feels a little bit, couple of degrees hotter than if it were a grass pitch. So tough conditions to play in. And yeah, that's just a dirty little trick to throw away the other team's water bottles so that they can't grab a drink.
Hey, that game's over with. We'll move on. Standings are really interesting right now. So if we want to recap, Ottawa is still in first place, but in second, York United has 20 points. Vancouver FC has 19. Pacific has 19. Forge has 18 with a game in hand. And in sixth place is Cavalry with 17 points. So those are five teams that are really, really close together in the standings.
4 points separating second and sixth last week, and this week it's only 3 points. So a win for Cavalry could really move them up the table, depending on how the teams just in front of them do. But it won't be easy, right? They're going to be welcoming York United to Spruce Meadows this Saturday, and I mean they've had good wins over York in the past, but by no means will that be an easy match.
Yeah, it always seems like they get good results against York, but York's been playing well, and they're in second place. It's tight, but they're still in second, and they have a new coach. This I can't say I know too much about him. I know he's Mexican, but and he has some experience in Mexican leagues, and I think he's also coached in Asia and some other places. But it seems like things are going okay there right now. So I think it's going to be a tight match, and we'll see. Sometimes when York comes in, it seems like I wouldn't say an easy 3 points, but it seems like they always tend to get good results against them. But I don't think we can rely on that this weekend.
No, and I have to confess, I watch York probably the least out of any of the CPL teams, so it's hard for me to kind of gauge their quality. But the table doesn't lie, and they are in second place right now. Only team ahead of them is that really strong Ottawa team, and they are coming into the game off of a win. They beat Wanderers 2-1 to kind of end that team's good run of form. They also recently beat Pacific 2-0 despite getting a red card, and they beat Atletico in mid-June, right? That was think Atletico's, I want to say, was it their first loss of the season? I might be wrong, but basically, like, this isn't the usual York that's coming to town. This is a reinvigorated York that has really found their feet since changing their coach mid-season.
So I don't know the status of Brad Camden, but we know Ali Musi will still be out. But I think generally, like, they're getting more back into good health, and we should see the new addition this week. I'm expecting that's all going to happen because apparently the paperwork can all be put through, and he should be able to be ready for the game.
Yeah, so the new player being alluded to, and we found out very shortly after our last episode aired, so we weren't able to say who it was. We did a lot of speculation, but if anyone doesn't know who's listening to this, that player's name is Niklas Wehling, and he is from Germany.
I don't know what your thoughts are, Scott, about him. You certainly are more on top of German soccer than I am, but it sounds like the kind of player who would be the kind of player you would expect to come to the CPL. He's played 4th division and he seems to have like a amenable skill set. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the teams he's played for, like you said, kind of the semi-pro or lowest level of professional in Germany, but he has a really impressive upbringing in terms of the teams that he's been with and the coaches that he's been tutored by. So he was with 1899 Hoffenheim's youth setup, and he was with them from 2015 to 2019. At the time, he was coached by Julian Nagelsmann, who's, of course, now the German national team head coach and used to be with Bayern Munich and Red Bull Leipzig before that. And he played alongside the likes of Serge Gnabry, Stefan Posch, and Christoph Baumgartner. So really impressive, youth career to speak of. The German team he's most recently played for is called TSV Steinbach-Heiger. I don't imagine a lot of soccer fans in Calgary have heard of that team. And despite being a fan of German football, I myself hadn't heard of that team.
Based on what we know, he's been with the team for a while, so there's no reason to think he won't be in the 18. I don't know how likely he's going to start, but I would say right now it's pretty reasonable to presume he'll see the pitch at some point on Saturday afternoon.
Probably itching to see the pitch. Yeah, I doubt he would be in the starting 11, but I imagine we would see him subbed in during the second half at some point.
Hi, this is Grace Doherty, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So let's turn our attention to Foothills WFC, and they closed out their UWS season last Saturday afternoon. FC Arizona came to town, and Foothills had a resounding victory of 7-0. And this is their last match. It does seem strange because they only played 6 games and they only had 2 home games, but this is it for the season. I verified that with the club.
Yeah, we talked last week about how 2024 has kind of been a bit of a dud for the UWS Western Conference. It was really a one-horse race after the first few weekends of the season. Foothills weren't able to get a good result in either of their games against Santa Clarita, who appear to be the only team in this division that can really give them a good game. I think every other game that they played this season was pretty one-sided, and they may have gotten, unless I'm missing something, clean sheets and in all of their other matches.
I believe that's true. I think when they went down and did those road trips, they beat Los Angeles 4-0. They beat Players, I think it was 8-0.
8-0.
And then when they played Arizona in Phoenix, it was, I think, 4-0 as well. So I don't think they conceded a goal except for the ones they did against Santa Clarita.
Yeah, and this one was 7-0, so repeating the trend. And it's probably frustrating for the players because, you make it onto this team and you think of it as like a stepping stone to get seen, especially this year with a pro team coming in 2025. But you only really have 1 or 2 hard games, and then the rest appeared to be cakewalks.
I'm not really sure that Foothills playing in UWS, is it something they really want to keep pursuing into 2025 and beyond? Like, I don't know. Like, I think for some of the reasons that we've talked about, I'm not sure it's worth it. You got to go down. trips to the States are expensive, and you're going down there, and with the exception of Santa Clarita, you're just going down there and kicking the other team's butts anyway. Then when you have home games, which you're expecting to have these home games, the teams don't show up. Los Angeles, they had trouble with their flight, and the Vegas team, that game was scheduled and not scheduled, and it just seems to have disappeared off the schedule. So, and last year it was similar, right? There was the team out of Reno, and they were a first-year team, and they were a one-and-done team. But by the time it got to the end of the season, they were one of the last games for Foothills, and yeah, they also decided they weren't coming. So I don't know, like, what kind of league is it when teams just bail on, coming? I don't know, like, you're either in the league playing the teams or you're not. And I think that kind of affects the integrity of the league overall.
Yeah, no, you've made some good points there, and I know that you've done some digging, and I like what you've done here, which is compile Foothills' total record since the 2021 season against U.S. clubs, not including Santa Clarita Blue Heat. So these would be Reno, Los Angeles, FC Arizona, Players SC, and then a team called Congo. They've compiled 15 wins, 1 loss in that time. They've scored 63 goals, and they've only allowed 5. So very impressive numbers, but it does show that they're really not getting decent competition when they're not playing Santa Clarita.
I think the thing that's kind of insulting about the whole thing is that these teams just bail on coming to Calgary. I don't know, like, when you even look at it from a business standpoint, if you're Foothills and you have corporate sponsors, and you've got a corporate sponsor of the game, and you've got 4 of them set up for the year, and then 2 of them, they don't get their game of the week. And also, if you're a corporate sponsor, how do you get your sort of promotion out there? It's by, having your name at the field, sort of have your banner up and stuff like that. There's a reason, like, you get ticket revenue from those games, but it's bigger than that. And, I don't know, like, I think, to me, that's a thing right now, is that I think I'd be worried about even upsetting my sponsors.
Yeah, another good point. And something else worth considering is those wins and goals scored and the stuff that I mentioned that you compiled. Imagine what their record and goals scored total would be if these teams that aren't coming to Calgary, if they did travel, because these are the teams that Foothills is smoking pretty much every time they play.
I don't really know how you look ahead to 2025, but it's going to be a weird year because, the pro league is happening. And, I think some of the players, and probably like more than 1 or 2, like a handful or more, are going to be in that league next year. So for those like players that are, quote unquote adults, they're done their college eligibility, like your Sarah Kinsners and, Grace Dohertys and Talia Whites. If a lot of them land on their feet in the NSL, then you're left with, your Anna Howers and your Rebecca Grisdales and the other players that are playing in the NCAA and for U Sports. Maybe you just say, like, we'll roll those players into the League One team, and then our League One team would be, it'd be crazy good, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. And yeah, the young players like Reese Kincaid or the Stewart twins. It begs the question of UWS, especially in the Western Conference. Does that need a rethink, or does Foothills need to bail on that and pursue other avenues? I think League One and strengthening that league and that Foothills program is probably the way to go. I imagine now that it's here, UWS may not necessarily be as appropriate, and it is an expensive endeavor, right? You're talking about traveling all the way down to Nevada to California a couple of times a year. Other than League One, are there any other alternatives that we can maybe think of that would be a viable option for Foothills WFC?
There really are 2 other pro-am leagues for women's soccer in the North American setup. And one is a familiar name. It's the USL. And USL for years and years had the W League. Calgary Wildfire in 2004 had 1 year in it, but it was revived in, I think it was 2022. I think this is the 3rd year. Foothills has a lot of history with the USL. They played, the men's side played in what was called the PDL on the USL 2 now. There is a Pacific Northwest division. That could be an option possibly. I don't know. And then the other option is a league, which I really don't know much about, but I did a little bit of research, and it's called the WPSL. And They have a Pacific Northwest division. And I guess the intriguing part of that is there's a team in Spokane, but also the NWSL team Seattle Reign and Portland Thorns. That's where they keep their two teams, like Seattle Reign 2 and Portland Thorns 2. So if you were in that league, you would have the opportunity to play those teams. I'm not sure how much that's truly worth, but those seem to be the two options. I don't know what's the best setup, but
like, do either of those divisions have Canadian teams in it, either from BC, for instance?
No, they don't. They don't have, like, there's no BC teams because, what's really happened for the most part, like with the one team in BC that was playing south of the border was TSS Rovers, but they're pretty committed right now to League One BC. So I don't think there are, and I don't think there's any in Ontario either. So it would be a bit different for a Canadian team to be involved in those leagues. But like I said, the USL and Foothills go way back. So
who knows? Maybe it's something that Foothills is already talking about. I think they do need to do something because UWS just seems to be a wash.
Yeah. Well, I just think even as players, like, what are you really playing for, right? Like, you've got a couple really interesting games against Santa Clarita, but then other teams don't show up, and then you go play the other teams and you beat them up real bad. Anyway, I'm excited to see the season end. I would have loved to have seen a couple more home games, but hey, that's what it is, I guess. And before you know it, it'll be time to see the Calgary Wild, and I guess we'll see what iteration that Foothills takes on next year.
Hi guys, this is Karim Bachir Bey. You're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. Have a great day.
So now it's time for our interview of the week. Our guest this week is Karim Bachir Bey, and I really enjoyed this interview, Scott. As you mentioned, he's playing for the University of Lethbridge, and he's with the Thunder Bay Chill right now. And it sounds like the Chill are having a pretty good season, but as I understand it, that's kind of par for the course around there.
Yeah, the Chill, I think they're in first place in their division, and as they tend to do, playing quite well. So let's run that interview from Karim to hear what he has to say about that program. I'd like to welcome Karim Bachir Bey to the podcast. Karim is a midfielder with the Thunder Bay Chill in USL 2, and during the university season, he plays for the University of Lethbridge Pronghorns. But originally, he is from Calgary, so a good guest to have on our podcast this week. Karim, thanks for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure.
We know you're from Calgary, and we know what teams you're playing for now, but can you kind of run us through your career to date and which clubs you were involved with growing up and how you ended up going down to Lethbridge?
Yeah, of course. So I initially started my youth career with Calgary West because I'm originally from the northwest of Calgary, lived in Tuscany like my whole life. And then when I was around 13, 14, I got invited to try out for Foothills. So moved over to the south there and played with them until I was finished high school. And then I went over to the University of Lethbridge. And so I just played men's league during the summers for the first part of my adult career. And then after COVID happened, there wasn't a lot going around. So in 2021, I decided to, I guess, kind of do something crazy. And I actually went and moved down for the summer to Baltimore and played in Maryland for a USL2 team called Patuxent FC in their inaugural season. And then after that, I've sort of just become addicted to playing USL2. I loved it my first year. So then the following year, I switched it up and I went to Houston and I brought another player from Calgary. His name's Armand Thoyer. He was a goalkeeper and my good friend. And we went there last summer and we had a successful season. And then this year, I guess with our performances in USL2 and in U Sports and CanWest, Thunder Bay wanted us to play for them because they knew we were Canadians and we had USL2 experience, and that's how we ended up here.
Right now, I would like to ask about the whole Baltimore experience. So how did you find out about Baltimore? How did that all come together? Because, for somebody from Calgary with, not a lot of connections to the US, tell us all about how that worked out.
Yeah. So it was definitely tough. I knew about I originally thought it was called PDL because I used to always go to the Foothills PDL games back in the day, back in like from 2016 to 2018, before we had like Cavalry and the CPL and stuff, and that was like the highest league. So I knew of the league PDL and the new name USL2. Yeah, basically I knew I wanted to play USL2 and I had no connection, so I literally just looked through the standings and tried to find the email of every single team, and Patuxent my first year were the only ones that responded to me and were willing to house me and feed me and that sort of stuff. So that's how I got down there. So I thank him a lot for that because they basically took a punt on somebody they didn't know.
Like you've mentioned, and we mentioned off the top, you're now at the Thunder Bay Chill, which has been in the USL2 for, I believe, a long time. But I don't think most Calgarians, even the soccer fans here, know that much about them. But yeah, it's obviously a high level. So can you talk a little bit about the Chill as an organization and their kind of status in the city of Thunder Bay?
Yeah, so it's been a bit of a crazy time playing for the Chill because it's still pre-professional, semi-professional soccer, but Thunder Bay is only around 100,000 people, so I'm basically like we're one of the only sports teams in the city. So we'll get in between 500 to 2,000 people a game, depending on obviously the importance of the fixture and if it's a Friday or a Sunday or a weekend or a weekday. So yeah, it's crazy because they pride themselves on giving players kind of like a professional environment, and they're completely right. Like we've got our own locker rooms, which are beautiful. Like the fans are amazing. It's as close as professional as you can be without paying the players. So it's honestly like an amazing experience, and I recommend it for anyone that wants to take that next step into being either professional or experience what it's like to be a professional.
That's why I sort of find the whole concept of the Chill really interesting, because they've been around for like at least 20 years and they're always a good team, but most of the players I think typically come from other places and stuff. So I think it's kind of a bit of an argument in favor of like, how big does a place really need to be to set up something like this? And I guess the answer is a place like Thunder Bay has been able to manage it.
Yeah, exactly. It just goes to show that like if you have passionate people running the club and people that have an idea and are willing to push forward with it and get support, that like even places in Alberta like Lethbridge could have like an AMSL team or I guess a League One team, or other places. I don't know about Red Deer, about the football there, but yeah, it just goes to show that it's really about the people that are in charge.
As Jason mentioned, Kareem, a lot of the Chills players come from elsewhere. So there's clearly a great like recruitment system there. I'm curious, like, would you guys room and board with each other, or would you be billeting with families? Like, what does it usually look like when you move down there in May or whatever it is?
Yeah, so usually preseason starts at the beginning of May, and obviously this was my first year, but basically the main university in Thunder Bay is called Lakehead University. So there's a couple of houses that usually house students, but during the summer, obviously they go home. So that's where we stay, and it's basically like a house. It's got 4 rooms upstairs, so for 4 players, and then it's got a kitchen, living room, bathroom downstairs. So it's a bit of a tight space, but it's perfect for us. And we get rides to the facility every single day, and have like a company car just in case we need to get groceries and stuff like that. So I think Thunder Bay, compared to all the other USL2 teams that I've played for and I've like heard about, I think they're one of the top teams in taking care of their players and making sure that the only thing we have to worry about is getting results on the field.
How often do you train, and do the players strictly focus on football during the season, or do some of you have like part-time jobs or coaching gigs that you kind of do simultaneously?
Yeah, so we train about if we have a match day on a Friday or a Saturday, we'll train from Monday all the way till match day, till the game of the day, and obviously it's harder in the beginning and it gets lighter throughout the week. And then like in our downtime, I know for a couple of the guys, including myself, we have online classes, so that takes up a bit of our time. But Thunder Bay also has a big youth setup and a big like I guess footprint in the community. So we'll actually go out and coach U8 U10, U12, U14, and U16, just community teams, and help out that way just to get ourselves in the community. And then we also go to schools and go to grocery stores that sponsor us and just help out there and just show face and kind of just keep our name in the community.
That's the way it should be done at USL2 level. Good for you guys.
You've been doing this League Two thing for a few years now, but since you started doing this, League One Alberta has come about. So I guess kind of want to get your impressions of what you think of League One Alberta, based on what you know. I know you haven't played in it yet, but what are your thoughts?
Honestly, I think it's great. It gives off the same sort of vibes of USL2, and I think it's awesome that like there's basically a chance that if you're at the top of the league, at least in the men's side, you can go and play a professional team like Cavalry. And I'm not sure how much you guys watch the Canadian Championship, but I know, like, for example, like Laval did an amazing job beating Halifax a while back to play TFC, and that's an amazing experience for any player to be in that environment. So yeah, I'm definitely curious, and I would love to play Alberta League One. I think just the biggest thing for me is I've kind of the mentality that I think I grow the most when I'm out of my comfort zone. And I know being in Alberta, and being at home in Calgary, I'd definitely be in my comfort zone. And I already play against most of the people in League One during my university play. So just getting some different competition, playing against different people, getting different types of coaches and environments just overall helps me grow as a player the most. So that's why I do it personally.
For sure, Karim. So you alluded to U Sports there. You're playing with the Lethbridge Pronghorns in the fall. How would you say USL2 compares to U Sports in Canada West?
It's a very good question. I think Canada West is a lot, I'd say, faster of a league. Like I think it's a lot more built on speed and just pure power and athleticism. I think USL2, I think it's you get a lot more of a mix between a lot of athletic players as well as a lot of skilled players. So like every game is a bit different. Some games might be very slow and tactical and methodical, and other games are very high paced. But I think USL2 is a bit of a tougher division, I'd say. But Can West isn't anything to like shake your head at either. Like they're both very competitive and tough leagues.
How's the season been going overall? I think we checked the standings here previous to recording, and Chill's leading their division right now. So you want to talk a little bit about the season?
Yeah. So it's been a pretty good season so far. It's actually our 25th year. So there's been a little bit of pressure to win the league this year because usually Chill does pretty well and gets first or second place, but being at the 25th year, there's been a bit more emphasis on that. And yeah, it's always tough in the beginning because you have like a bunch of guys that have never played with each other for the most part, and you have to assemble a team and find each other's kind of like weaknesses and strengths and what you like and what you don't like. So at the beginning, it was definitely a bit of a hard patch, but once we kind of got rolling into June, we haven't really looked back, and I think we've been probably, like, in my opinion, one of the best teams in the league. I think we've won the last 5 games on the bounce, and I think we just need one more point or one more win to clinch the division before playoffs begin.
So the team is doing great. Karim, how would you kind of rate your own performances thus far? And what are your own expectations personally in terms of performance and contributions to the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had a pretty good summer so far. I think in terms of just my contribution and stuff, I think I'm a pretty valued member of the team. Like I've started more than half the games and stuff, and I've played in every single game so far. So I think I'm a decent contributor, and overall, I think the season's gone really well. Like every season in USL2, I've learned something different. And this season, I've definitely learned new things about myself and ways to improve my game, just looking at my teammates and learning off them. And then in terms of just ambitions, I think I've never been to the playoffs. Like I got really close last year. So the goal here is just to make it to the playoffs and then see what happens from there. Because once you get in the playoffs, there's so many eyes on you and so many potential opportunities that it's just a good place to be.
Let's just leap ahead to the fall, and you're going to be returning to the University of Lethbridge. What are your thoughts about this upcoming year? You have a new coach at this time, and I guess that's going to be probably a bit of a transition. What do you think about the upcoming year?
Yeah, very, very excited, especially coming off our last year where we got like our second playoff appearance in school history. So I'm very excited to see what the boys can do this year. We didn't lose too many pieces either, so I'm very excited. I think our new coach Vic has some awesome ideas, and yeah, I think our teams. This is probably like the peak of our team because a lot of kind of our players are getting into their fourth or fifth year now. So I think this is our time to make a big splash in U Sports, and wouldn't be surprised if we made it to playoffs again and even did a little better. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, we are as well. Canada West, like you mentioned in the previous answer, it's become such a great division, and there's so much good soccer being played. Lethbridge and Calgary schools, Alberta last year. Beyond your university career and USL2, I'm curious what your future aspirations are with soccer. I believe do you have a Slovakian passport that could maybe open some doors?
Yeah. So I am part Slovakian, and I have the citizenship for that. So I definitely love to play in Europe, more specifically Slovakia in the future. Definitely at the minute I'm more focused on getting my degree, so I so I have a piece of education with me, but I'd love to play in Europe, especially in the future, or CPL, or even the States in USL One or USL Championship or MLS. Honestly, anything professional would just be awesome because it's been my dream to be a professional player since I've been a little child.
Is there anything else you want to add in? Is there any shout outs or anything you want to mention at this time that we haven't asked yet?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great platform for especially younger players to get some knowledge and insight on the game, especially if you're from Calgary. And I think if you're a young player, looking at me or looking at anyone in League One, I think the biggest thing is just to get outside your comfort zone. I know there's a couple players that I know that are playing in NISA, which is another American league, or playing in League One Ontario, but don't just, I guess, limit yourself to simply Alberta. If you want to go somewhere else and try something new, definitely do that. Like, that would be my biggest recommendation for anyone if they're trying to become a better footballer.
Well said, Kareem. Well, thank you so much for coming on our podcast and answering all our questions about your career. We're going to be rooting for the Chill, and we hope that the rest of the summer and the upcoming U Sports season goes great for you.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys so much.
Thanks again to Kareem for doing the interview with us. And we recorded this on Tuesday. And since then, the Chill have played another game, and they were able to win that one. And they have now clinched their division. So they will be going to the playoffs. They still have one more game on Friday night, but they've secured the top spot of that division. So as he mentioned, he has not played in USL2 playoffs, but he's finally going to get his chance after 3 years.
Yeah, no, their game tonight is against Minneapolis City, who they also beat on July 5th, so last Friday, 3-2. The games you alluded to, their U.S. road trip, that included games against Rochester FC, that was a 2-0 win, and then St. Croix, which was a 2-1 win. So they're grinding out a lot of good results. They're not really thumping anybody, but they're winning, 2-1, 1-0. Curious to see how the playoffs fare for Thunder Bay, and they can make a deep run and make Canada proud.
My name is Mo Gander, and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So let's wrap up our episode with some discussion of League One Alberta. The end of the season is fast approaching for both the men's and the women's divisions. On the women's side, very interesting at the moment, ASA High Performance, which is like the Alberta U16 team. They're in first place, but they do have a couple of games in hand over Calgary Blizzard, who are 2 points behind them in second.
On Tuesday night, Hallies had their match. I believe they played ASA High Performance, and I think they won 5-2, and Kendall Shower scored 4 goals. And not only did she score 4 goals, she scored 4 goals in the first half. In fact, I think it was in the first 30-some minutes.
That's a pretty good outing for Kendall Showers, who I think is staking her claim as potentially the player of the season in the whole division.
She's really making a statement as far as, like, she's she's a goal scoring machine. What can you say right now? And she's also the only person that can say that she scored a goal against Santa Clarita Blue Heat.
Yeah. So what a performance from her. And then on the men's side, Jason, I know you were at a game on Tuesday night at Broadview. You were texting me throughout. It was Foothills against Blizzard.
Yeah, it was a good match. I was just walking into the stadium when former podcast guest Mo Elgander was taking a penalty and he scored. And final score was 3-1 for Foothills. And man, Foothills looked good. Like Owen Antoniuk scored 2 goals and he was very good out there. And they've really asserted themselves here the last few weeks.
Yeah, they now climbed up to second or co-joint, joint second place alongside St. Albert men. So they're both on 17 points now.
That's correct. So I believe the Blizzard have a game in hand and they're at 15 and Foothills, they're at 17. So they're all pretty tightly bunched up there.
There's still some jostling going on in the men's division, although Edmonton Scottish do have a 3-point lead at the top of the table.
I am Christian Greco-Taylor, and this is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So a couple odds and ends here to finish off this episode. I ran across one thing here, and this is something, Scott, again, we're alluding to your vast knowledge of German football, but anyway, we found out this week that Tate Asante, who is a Calgary player, and he actually signed a developmental deal with Cavalry previously. He's playing this year for FC Bayern World.
I have to confess, I didn't know about this until you informed me about it, but FC Bayern World is almost like a talent recruitment reality show, I guess. Like they recruit or get all these U19 players from across the world and they bring them to one place, and I guess it's almost like a tryout in a sense. But he is now part of that, which, I haven't watched it before, but it reminds me of something that I used to watch when I was a teenager. I may get the name wrong, but it was called like the Nike Academy or Nike FC or something. It was sponsored by Nike, obviously, but they did something like that where they got all these players who wanted to play professionally, who are 17, 18 years old, and trained them and played a lot of exhibition games. And I remember one of their exhibition games was against Southampton's Youth Academy, which at the time had Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who was lighting up the field. I remember the game footage, but I honestly didn't even remember Tate Asante, but he was signed by Cavalry in 2023. So their most successful season. And
another note of a player with a Calgary connection, Christian Greco-Taylor, a Calgarian who's currently on the roster of Pacific in the CPL. He was selected again for the Canada U20 team that is going down to Mexico for the CONCACAF Championships.
Yeah, he hasn't played that much for Pacific this year. He's been brought on as a sub mostly for, a few minutes at a time, but he has been a fixture for the U20 men's national team. He traveled recently down to Chile and also went to Trinidad and Tobago with the team for some games. So this is a good reward for him to be on that flight to Mexico later this month.
Those matches start, I think it's next weekend. So I don't know. I think maybe we'll preview a little bit more about what's going on in those U20 championships next week. Does that sound okay, Scott?
That sounds good to me.
The last point we were going to mention is right before we're recording here on Thursday night, I ran across another bit of info when you start talking about youth teams from Europe and stuff. Cavalry U21 team is actually going to go on the road. They're going to head over to Kamloops on July 28th, and they're going to play Fulham's U21 team. So that could be kind of cool.
Yeah, that is, it seems super random, but it's a great experience. I don't know how good Fulham's Youth Academy or their U21 program is, but I hope that some people in Kamloops get wind of that game and go check it out, because it'll probably be a pretty interesting spectacle.
The reason I found out about it is because I don't think Cavalry has made any official announcement about it as of recording time, but Vancouver FC did. And that's how I found out about it, because Vancouver FC announced they're going to send a U21 team to Kamloops to play Fulham. And then, I clicked on the link for tickets. And when you click on the link for tickets, all the games show up. And Fulham U21 are going to play Vancouver FC, Cavalry FC, and they're going to play a League One BC All-Star team. Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other podcasting platforms. Check out our website at yycsoccer.com, and you can look through our episode archive, and you can also find other options to listen, including our new YouTube channel. We also have links to buy Scott's book online. If you have a question or comment, you can leave it in the Contact Us section of the website. You can also interact with us on social media, such as Twitter or Instagram, where our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.